Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Much appreciate everyone participating in the meeting this evening, as well as our citizens that may be watching. I call to order the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, April 2, 2025. Patient authority. So again, welcome to participating and welcome to all of our citizens who may be watching this meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of February 13, 2025, draft meeting summary minutes. Everyone had a chance to review? Question. Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Items passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Let me just quickly review. There'll be a lot of action items on the authority agenda tonight that are based upon the last few meetings of the Finance Committee. So our intent is to discuss things in detail here. We want to make sure that all authority members are fully advised and as the public about the details as well as the sort of the strategies and the other larger issues regarding the findings. So our materials are available in public, and I will urge all the authority members to just form their own judgments to make sure that they're consistent with what our recommendations are. So our first presentation tonight is the upcoming audit. Michael Hart.
Jump in. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mr. Snyder. Appreciate that. There will be no action on anything I'm talking about this evening, so you don't have to worry about that. As we have done in the past, I either sometimes meet with this committee to kick off our audit. Other times I've talked with Mayor Randall. Rochelle, thank you. I was looking at Randall and that wasn't right. And I was complete blank. Or I just had one-on-one conversations with her to kick off the audit as well. And she represented the committee extremely well in those conversations. My main purpose really this evening is one, to let you know that PB Mayors is here. We have started our pre-planning process for the audit and working with Michael and Peggy and a lot of the new team members to get that going and setting dates and all that kind of wonderful stuff. So we have started that process. The other item that I usually open up with this meeting is really just to get the communication between us going back and forth. While one of the procedures as auditors that we do for all of our clients is meeting with a finance committee or an audit committee or some groups, if they don't have a committee, the board chair. And just say, hey, if there's concerns that you have, any type of financial or compliance type things that we would look at, let me know. We will build those things into our audit plan, just like it's any other audit procedure. And Michael, his team won't know that someone has asked me to look at different things. And we'll report back to you guys if there's anything that needs to be reported. Most of our audits, we try to do different things each year anyway. We try to look at maybe a different area, a different focus. So if there are areas of concern that you have, looking at something new or different really will just be part of our normal audit process. So obviously in this open forum is probably not the place to tell me if there's issues that you have or concerns. And I understand that, but it is to let you know that my email and phone are always available. And if you do have things that you'd like for us to look at, just please let me know. And then lastly, it is just to ask you if you have any questions for me concerning the audit or anything that you may want to just get a handle on understanding the process. So, and that's really my only reasons and purposes for being here this evening.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody have any questions? Any comments at all at this point? Okay.
I would just add that Sheriff Snyder and Mr. Garber had an exchange of phone numbers and emails. So if you do want to contact him, because I am a firm believer that audits like this are best done in independent nature, I look at it as basically a way for me to stay out of trouble. And I keep that in the back of my mind, so you have access to the contact information.
Sure, I do have one question.
Sure.
And this could be something we talk about later. Under the number 2, the active focus areas and topics for verbal recap. Number J, the rancher's tax. This says, monitoring and analysis. Knowing the, amount of the numbers of people who live in the Northern Virginia area who are federal employees who may be impacted one way or the other with their jobs. Do you think that that could impact the rancher's tax in any way? I'm kind of worried again about seeing foreclosures, which means that we'll be getting that rancher's tax money sometime. Or do you have any concerns about any of those things? Because rancher's tax, our tax sources have been, fumbled around with quite a bit of Richmond already.
Sure.
And really the most stable of our tax sources that we have was the rancher's tax. And that may now not be true anymore. So
I'm going to go way out on the limb. And I'm not always right. It's not even close. And every day I'm not always right. I think you'll be okay. Michael's got it here for monitoring and analysis.
Yeah, I like
He
that.
can
I like
give me
that,
his
but that
opinion
says
as well.
monitoring and analysis, good verbiage.
But in 08, I think we were looking at something very different issue than what we had.
Okay.
When that
Yeah.
tax did drop
Yeah.
drastically. And it took it a while for it to come
Yes.
back. As we all know. Even in this market that you live in and understanding just how dependent we are on federal dollars and those employees. Still think you're going to be okay.
Okay.
I don't have, I wish I had a crystal ball. I would make other decisions, maybe not be doing this. I did foretell the future. But right now, signs that I've seen so far, we're okay.
Well, it's so early. I mean,
I-
that's
we
the
are.
crystal ball
And-
part. It's
and-
so early.
There's a whole lot of saying we're gonna do something and then we're gonna give another 30 days or 90 days because now we're negotiating and we're talking. And I think Doge may end up at the same place at some point in time. It's not gonna be quite as bad as
I
I
really
don't
don't.
think it is.
Let's talk about how we might handle contingencies and maybe how we built that in.
We are, I had a discussion with Chair Snyder this morning. He kind of emphasized the importance of being transparent with our revenue estimates and our tax estimates. So we'll go into that a little bit further. From Northern Virginia, the 08 recession, which was mostly a real estate mortgage fueled recession, actually bumped renters up a little. Because when the property went to foreclosure, there was a grantor's fee. When it came out of foreclosure, there was interest. It may have looked more spread out in areas outside of Northern Virginia as that kind of worked its way through, but hopefully we don't go through a process. We all want more access to affordable housing. If value of the house being sold goes down, that obviously negatively impacts grantors. But if the volume of those transactions, which can be triggered by negative events, such as the mortgage crisis in 08, if that volume goes up, it can offset the decline in value. But what also happens there is one of the things we have started a really robust review of grantors. One of the things that we kind of hope doesn't happen, but it could help sustain the revenue as a number. But the human cost would be pretty dramatic. As people leave because they feel they have to, they lost their jobs. Sales price goes down, there's pent-up demand for housing. So somebody who has 3 kids and is living in a 2-bedroom townhouse may have the opportunity to go to a single-family home. You see those type of dynamics with grantors that are pretty difficult to predict. And I'm not making a prediction on it, although I think as we talk later tonight, I'll be able to give you some assurances that when we started this 10 years ago, one of the philosophies that the finance team had was we do never want the authority board to have to cancel projects because of changes in the economy, reductions in revenue and stuff like that. So we have built in a number of safeguards that, we'll be going into.
And if I could, I think the same happened with COVID. We were in the process of doing a funding program. And we thought that everything would go down regarding
Yeah.
our revenues. It went up.
I didn't think people were gonna lose their homes during COVID, though.
But the amounts we were receiving were so much higher than.
Oh, yeah, everybody buckled down and hunkered in and stay there, yeah. Okay, well, that's good because, more and more, when we're on the mayors and chairs calls and when we, hear from what the committee that's in Richmond, I think so much of it is, we just don't know right now. But we also know that, that this area, Northern Virginia and the Washington metro area, just so many people who are federal government employees, like 9.2% what we believe in our federal government employees, and that doesn't count contractors. So it could really be very impactful if we actually know what finally is going to happen. But you're right, there's a lot of, you're leaving now, you're coming back, and then you're leaving, and maybe, or if you're coming, it's just so up in the air right now. So, thank you.
Sure, good question.
Any other questions? Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Again, please let me know if there's anything else I can do.
Thanks.
Thank you for the time.
So we have some additional discussion items. Michael, the one thing I hope you will discuss are the contingency arrangements within our overall financial structure.
Yeah, I think in talking to Chair Snyder and the events of the last week and the last couple of days, especially in the market, I'm going to go through these really quickly. We can come back to them. When we haven't had a finance committee meeting for a while, we tend to present something like this to just make sure the committee knows what the finance team is working on. Obviously, we've got finalizing and implementing next year's budgets, project delivery support. There'll be some really good numbers coming out as part of the budget presentation on project delivery and very positive impact. You sent us a message last year's operating budget focused on project delivery. We are at what I would call the project problem resolution stage, which is a stage that requires a lot of conversations with project sponsors and jurisdictions and agencies, which is a big part of the budget request. We have the start of the audit. I do want to note, we hear headlines all the time about cyber threats. We have had penetration testing done on our systems. We are exclusively cloud and hosted based. We have upped our cybersecurity insurance. That has come with a new level of demands, and we are meeting those demands and working through that process. Frankly, our biggest vulnerability, like any organization, is an employee hitting that link. So we are starting a routine all hands training to help our folks avoid that. But that is our biggest vulnerability. We did pass those penetration tests. The investment portfolio, as you will hear more tonight, broke the $2 billion barrier threshold last month. There's a lot of good news about it. It's also, I know, very concerning when the markets are doing what they've been doing. The policy 29, we are, as I mentioned previously, we are working on some revisions to that. We are starting with that effort with the RJAC.
You say what policy 29 is?
Policy 29 is the one that says you have to have your invoices to us in under 18 months. You have to have your SPA within 3 months, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, that supports project delivery. We are working on our landlord concession utilization. We have to have that done by a certain point in time. You will see some updated signage coming in, some other accoutrements for the office. We are working on potentially making some improvements to the audio system because living with it for a little bit, we've seen some areas that we might be able to improve on, but of course, we are keeping an eye on the dollar costs on that as well. And we will give a final accounting for that as part of the FY 25 audit. Transaction 6-year program procurement comes up. This is our largest procurement effort. It also, in addition to the transaction study, which is refreshed every 5 years, there are 3 funding 6-year program consulting services that are done with that. Procurement for in support of unforeseen initiatives. I think we will be talking about an unforeseen initiative potentially as part of the GPC recap with Chair Randall. Grantor's tax revenue and monitoring and analysis. If I'm worried about one tax, it's I'm worried about grantors. But again, I think even if grantors were to continue to go down, we've got the ability to weather the storm because with the guidance of the authority board members from day one, we have built a lot of resiliency into what we do. It's important to remember, we don't have schools. We don't have public safety. We don't have human services. We fund projects and you do it on a 2-year cycle. And that gives us a lot of flexibility and robustness in being able to respond to what could be some significant economic challenges. I do know we went through Fitch Ratings, their annual surveillance analysis. They asked all sorts of revenue questions for and what's the impact of federal employment, et cetera, et cetera. Something that was really neat was I was able to take the reports that are in your package, send them to the rating analysts in 30 minutes. I don't know if they're used to seeing that much detail and getting it in 30 minutes. Because we have these processes in place, we have the discipline to keep this stuff, ready and to keep you guys informed. They affirmed our rating, AA++, the highest we can possibly get for our type organization with a stable outlook. And I think the stable outlook came because of the things we've kept in place for this stormy weather. Interestingly enough, without talking to us, Moody's ratings also affirmed our rating.
Without talking?
Without talking to us.
Wow.
And S&P does it annually. Moody's does it every couple of years.
Congratulations.
And S&P does it on a schedule I can't figure out because if I could figure it out, we also know that some of the things we're working on, and this is part of this is the bandwidth discussion for the budget discussions. We implemented policy 30. Policy 30 looks for us to have some on-call consulting services. We need to do that. Procurement. One of the things you'll hear about is Deb, who used to do our procurements, is now managing $2 billion. One of the things she chased down today, we did a $15 million investment purchase, which is rather on the low side for us, small side. The right is we did it 4 days ahead of the settlement. When the settlement was due, the bond market had dropped dramatically. So our supposition is the seller said, I don't want to sell this anymore. And so they just didn't make it available. And so we have the seller, whom we don't know, the selling broker, TD Bank, whom we don't have a relationship with. So there's not a whole bunch of love on a regular basis going on there. We obviously have ourselves and we have our buying broker. In between, for safety, we have our custodian. So our money is never at risk. In fact, because we're earning interest on that money for the 8 days, 7, 8 days it took to settle, we're earning interest on the money. Deb stuck by her guns because typically the selling side wants you to just walk away. You're not making it whatever. She literally had to make half dozen calls a day to keep track of that topic. We actually made $26,000
Yesterday.
over those 8 days. Because we did finally bring it, she was able to bring it to settlement. And I'll tell you, if you ever want to talk about the ferociousness of a petite person, it is Deb dealing with Wall Street.
Yeah.
She stuck with it. And so we not only earned interest while our money was sitting with our custodian. The seller had to pay us interest from the date that they were supposed to settle. So for 8 days, that was our highest earning interest at about 8.26%.
Maybe she should be Howard Lutnick.
No, I need her.
Right. Country needs her too.
And we also have the, one of the things we talked about several meetings ago is redoing our economic analysis with an incorporation of the core values. So those are the things we are trying to accomplish. And I'll.
Interesting question. So, last year, when Loudon went for our credit ratings, first of all, Fitch is hard, so congratulations there. They're the hardest one. But what I noticed for the first time last year is Fitch, it was Fitch and S&P spent an inordinate amount of time on talking about our cybersecurity investments and what we had done. And did you experience any of that? Did they spend time with that, you all?
They didn't bring that up.
They did not. Interesting.
But I tell you, the bad actors look at financials, which we have to publish.
Yeah.
We have to publish those financials. And that's one of the reasons, Peggy and other people on the finance team kind of doubled down on the cybersecurity is we're very much aware that unlike corporations, every item that we own to the penny in our investment portfolio is in the public report that's in your packet. Every single instrument. So I think governments have an extra level of vulnerability because the bad actors can pick through and they look at us, they see 2 billion plus actually, because 2 billion is just a portfolio. And they see 20 people.
They say,
And they
they
go,
send an email, Monica wants you to transfer $100,000.
They scrape our emails off our website and other places, and we do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We were sitting in a meeting, staff meeting, and we were talking about cybersecurity, and literally I had one come through
Yeah.
saying, please transfer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay, moving on.
So the investment portfolio, Deb has prepared kind of a special presentation. I do want to emphasize that this is we call it GASB Board, Government Accounting Standing Board Rule 40, which shows everything we have. There's absolute transparency in the portfolio. But Deb has got a recap presentation that's up on the screen now that she will walk through.
Good evening, everyone. So here is a little overview of investment portfolio strategy for our fixed income portfolio. So the first is the monthly maturities and cash flow management. So we actively manage 80 to 100 million in securities maturing each month through a laddered approach, a plus and positive monthly cash flow of 20 million per month, which is a positive cash flow, which is in revenue. So this results in total monthly transaction reaching up to 120 billion. The laddering strategy actually helps us to support liquidity and aligns with projected funding needs. The second is the bond investment strategy. We generally target with a 2 to 3 year maturity to protect against any declining market interest rate. So the maturity chart on the second slide would show you a 5% increase in holdings within the 2 to 3 year maturity range. So our plan in the coming months is to target the 2 to 3 year and the 3 to 4 year maturity range so when the market is down, we are well covered up. Let me also draw your attention to Bloomberg dot plot, which is on slide 5. So this is from Bloomberg's mean that Mike and I have subscription to. You could see the yellow dots here represents the majority of it's basically a projected rate for the majority of the Fed fund speakers. So this shows by the end of 2025 will be approximately around like 3.875, and end of 2027 will be around 3.125. So the instrument that Mike was talking about, which is an April maturity, April 2027 maturity, we actually had an yield of 4.23. So by the time we are towards close to 2027, it'll be almost 110 basis points more. So by staying within this maturity window, it balances flexibility, manages duration risk, and preserves higher yields. Going back to the main screen, the third is our performance, and we have outperformed ICE BOFA 18-month average index by 8 basis points. So on slide 4, would have a chart that would show that we have outperformed LGIP extended maturity pool several months ago, and this month we actually outperformed ICE BOFA by 8 basis points. So we hope we continue to do that and beat the market.
You wanted to interrupt briefly, Deb will be going over this chart. And one of the things to think about with the authority's investment portfolio is it started with $1. And it didn't start with $1 10 years ago. It started with $1 around 2018, something like that. The market was really low at that point. Getting 25% of 1% was a good rate. So what you're seeing here from July 23 going up to the current time is us being able to position the portfolio. And she will go into that in
So going back to the main screen, the fourth point is callable bond strategy. So we intentionally avoid callable bonds to reduce any reinvestment risk. Now, callable bonds can be of different nature. It can have different intervals where it can get called, it'll monthly or continuous or even quarterly. So we try to avoid those frequently callable bonds because they basically would be called early and then we'll lose on the reinvestment risk. So the fifth point is about maturity, the one that Mike shared with you. So basically we have did an analysis of a 5-year maturity chart starting from April 25 to April 30. And this is showing the yields that we have. So this is basically average yield for the month that's displayed. Oh, that's on the chart. Sorry, that's in the handout. Yeah. So this basically shows the lower maturity months, and this allows us to target new investment that aligns with anticipated cash needs to support any project reimbursement.
If you look at this chart, and this is the protection for the yield on the portfolio. We have laddered out maturities out 5 years that are earning 4 or 5%. Today, a good yield would be less than 4%. So as the market goes down, we still own these instruments. We're not going to sell them. They will be paying 4 or 5% for 4 or 5 more years, even though, as you saw on the dot plot, each one of those yellow dots is a Federal Reserve board member who has been queried by Bloomberg to figure out where they think the future rates are going to be. It's a level of analysis that obviously, we pay a considerable amount of money for it, but it's pretty darn cheap when you look at the data that we get in order to make these decisions. So you can look at this chart, and we're not in the position we were when we started up. We have maturities that ultimately a portfolio will follow the market. But as rates go down, as they have done recently, we've got investments that are still paying 6%, 5%. And we actually, a big part of Dev's strategy is you only do those when you get exceptional return. You look for the values in the market. And today, for 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The other thing that by having these maturities, 20, 40, 80 million, $100 million in maturities each month, if one of your projects comes in and has a bunch of expense reimbursements that they didn't tell us were coming, we still have enough money churning through the system to be able to pay those reimbursements. When we started this, we tried to rely on the spin down plans for the individual projects, but they were so inaccurate for a variety of legitimate reasons. They were so inaccurate that we were losing money in the portfolio by trying to do that. So now we just try to have a bunch of money maturing each month. And as Devin mentioned, the $20 million in positive cash flow obviously doesn't hurt it as well. Our largest single reimbursement, just so you know, thus far has been 27 million. It's the largest single reimbursement we've been asked to do, and we were able to honor it within the time period.
So lastly is the market monitoring. So we monitor Fed policy and economic indicators, market movements to stay ahead of the trends. Like the example Mike was talking about, the New York Life bond. So not only we earned the actual, so the money was safe at the bank, earning the interest. We also earned an additional 26K because as per market convention in bond trading, the seller is supposed to be paying us interest from the originally agreed settlement date, even if they are at default. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
I do have one more slide here to monitor our public accounts.
You mean, you look like you have, you look like you have a question.
I don't think I understood the last bullet. Regulatory monitor, I mean, I guess, not that I don't understand it. I guess I'm kind of asking that. This all makes sense, and especially the last bullet makes sense in a market that is, well, I guess the market's never predictable, but is more predictable than what's happening right now.
Right.
That is, because right now it's not predictable. What do you do with the market monitoring in this, when we're going with right now? How are you doing this right now?
So Bloomberg, we rely highly on Bloomberg.
Okay.
So the dot plot that we showed you, that's something that we rely on where to understand where the projected rate could be. And based on that, we secure instruments.
Bloomberg gives us the view of the market that is the same as a trader
Like,
on Wall Street. That is the level of access that we.
Oh, okay.
So we can look, when we have a broker that tries to sell an instrument to us, they know that we can see within a minute what that instrument was sold to somebody else.
Yeah.
and we can also do a reverse inquiry, like we have done it in WAB before, where you look at an instrument, let's say Yankee CD, for example, negotiable CD, where it says it's 4.50 and somebody is quoting us 4.40 because the remaining is their commission, of course. So we must send them a screenshot that this is what we see. And they say, oh, let me come back.
Part of swimming,
Okay.
as part of Deb swimming with the sharks this week, she actually went, and it's called a failed bond. She actually took, it was a New York Life corporate note.
Yeah.
New York Life corporate note that the seller was essentially, we assume, refusing to sell. She went out and saw it being sold by other brokers and told our settlement broker, our broker who was selling it to us, to go tell the selling broker, we don't care what you have to do. That's the name we want. It's for sale. You need to go over there, buy it, take your loss, come back and give it to us at the rate we contracted for. And you've got to be able to do that, and you have to have that access to the information. Because if they had still refused to sell and we had refused to walk away, it would have gone into our mandatory arbitration. It would have, which is just going to suck up time. And then, if that fails and you go to litigation, and that is so expensive and time consuming, you don't do it for 15 minutes.
Right.
But she actually went out there, found those bonds being transacted on the Bloomberg, and told them to take the hit.
Thank you. My favorite doing it.
I do want to also mention that were we to outsource this portfolio, the fee to outsource it would be 8 to 20 basis points, depending upon the market conditions at the time. That would cost between 1.6 and $4 million in service fees. So Deb's now going to hit me up for a raise. But that, what she was doing, were we to hire a firm to do it, instead of having it in-house, would cost 1.6.
Wow, that's great.
Just pay her in honey.
The last point on this, and then we'll move on to other things, but it's important because it shows the leadership of the authority and the leadership of the finance committee in years past. The auditor of public accounts, who, Mike Garber has to follow their rules, as well as other audit standards when he does the audit, made a change and basically put in, you have to check your security for public deposits once a year. Our policy has us doing it 4 times a year from day one. So basically, security for public deposits, it's kind of complicated. It means that if the bank we have money in fails, it's a mechanism for us to get our money back outside of the FDIC insurance. It's like a state-run FDIC insurance. And banks do it as a service because the General Assembly said, we can't put our money in that bank unless it collateralizes it through the security for public deposits. But I think it was a good example of where our standards are higher than the newly evolved audit standard. And I think that, any questions on the portfolio? Hopefully this gives you some comfort.
A lot.
It does, and I'm particularly interested in how it against benchmarks. I think that's a pretty good indication of everything I do and what's the others.
So because we have those legacy investments, we are just now meeting our benchmarks. But that also shows you, we put benchmarks in place that were appropriate for when we became a grown-up portfolio. So it was kind of a stretch objective. We will not always hit them. We're going to have an aggressive benchmark. But I think we're very well positioned.
Any questions on the presentation? It's just great work. Thank you. So the remainder of the reports, I know we're getting close to it already. Is there anything you want to focus on?
We have a kind of a quick overview on our revenue situation. We're going to use the standard charts that are in your packet every month. I'm going to note here, this is a recap of our revenues. Sales tax is currently 9% above projection. The Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program, IOEP, is 21% below. That's not going to change. That is over the year. Branch Wars is 29.6, but you have the relative size of the revenue streams. To give you some comfort, if we do a calculation, sales tax would have to go $10 million negative at this point for us to not make our revenues.
How much?
$10 million negative from $30 million positive.
Oh.
Okay, and that's it's got 5 months to do that. Now, I do respect Musk and Trump's ability to be a disruptor, but I think that's even a challenge, going to be a challenge for them.
$1 million week.
Additionally, the 439 million annualized revenue is 100% of revenue. We care mostly, I know you care a lot about the 30%, but the 30% is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Okay. The 70% is what you have made long-term obligations on.
Right.
We have a $120 million fully funded working capital reserve that was put in place over time, but starting in 2014, because when we first became a funded creation, was also the year that the state came the closest that it had been in decades to not passing its budget by July 1st. So we took that experience very seriously, knowing that down the road, we are going to have these large, expensive projects wanting reimbursement. So we put that working capital reserve in there. We would have to miss that revenue estimate by 39% to tap out that working capital reserve. That is a lot of surety for our project sponsors. In addition to that, when we hit COVID, Al Parrish was chairing finance, very conservative guy. We said, we do this thing, we have the revenue estimates, and then we go to calculating the pay-go for projects. And in that calculation, we do this thing called the taper, which is just kind of whatever. We released that taper to get through COVID, and we built it back up in prior revenue estimates. Our current 5-year revenue estimates, when we were doing it, we realized the region has not had a contraction in so long, it's going to have a contraction. We put the contraction in fiscal 28. Why? Because it wasn't fiscal 29, which is the last year of the estimates, and it gives us flexibility to kind of move that contraction around. So all those factors together, even if we were to start to see really negative numbers, we are in a really good place. Our operating budget, you have to worry about operating budgets, salaries, payroll, buildings, et cetera, et cetera. Ours is such a small amount of this. I will go to the sales tax. You can see we are above the trend. We would like to be higher above the trend, but it's trending well, and it is stable. Flipping over to, this is a new chart. What this chart shows you is the green line is the actual interest earnings on the portfolio. That is accrued interest, that is coupon payments, it is net of premiums and discounts on the securities that we purchased. Our estimate for the portfolio this year was 35 million. We are already at 56.4 million, and that does not. So we have the revenue, this 30-70 revenue split, that is on top of the revenue split. So the portfolio is going to help us through challenging times as well. The blue bar is the market value of the securities. The gold bar is the book value. So as you look at this last month, February 25, the blue bar is higher than the gold bar. That means you have a positive mark to market, or you have unearned income. As I've said all along, when you see that, and it's going to get dramatic in the months to come, you can't spend it. It's not real. You only get it if you sold the instrument. Just like when it goes the other way, and the blue bar is lower and the gold bar is up, that's an unrealized loss. You don't have to worry about that either. It shows up on the financials as a valuation, but it doesn't impact cash. Next chart is grantors. Yeah. Actually, I was going to, if we had a February meeting,
Still not good about this.
if we had a March meeting, I'd be sitting here with my foot in my mouth, and I might as well put it in there anyway. I'd have said, hey, look, we're starting to see a positive trend. Grantors is tough. And I think, I'm hopeful that what we're seeing in March is grantors is very subject to monthly fluctuations. It's highly dependent on the real estate closings, obviously. It also is dependent on the clerk of courts processing stuff through their system to get it to the state. Grantors runs 1 month behind, sales tax runs 2 months. The dates that you see here that we used are the dates we actually got the cash. I know we're pressed for time. I'll be more than happy to take any questions on revenue. Again, hopefully, and have depending upon timing, I can go into this at the authority level as well. Hopefully as a finance committee, you're leaving this meeting feeling that very good. I think we might be the brightest spot in your week. Actual
Bring
basis.
that my honey.
Does everybody have anything else they'd like to discuss before we adjourn?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Section for adjourn. Thank you very much.
You might be, the authority members